Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome to the Flying Fluffy Football live stream where we talk about the Vikings Bears Monday night game last night, and we also talk about the potential implications of the disastrous game the Dolphins had against the Colts on Sunday. Colin has a couple of bits of news and rumors reports for us. He says that the Dolphins picked up offensive guard Cole Strange off the Browns practice squad. Now that's the same Cole Strange who was a first round pick a couple years ago by Bill Belichick in the Patriots. And he got released by the Patriots. And I guess now he's been not even playing well enough to stay on the Browns practice squad. So I guess that Cole Strange has now just become Austin Jackson insurance. There has been some rumors that the Steelers could trade for Tyreek Hill. Of course there has, because the Dolphins can't get their act together and fast. Tyreek Hill will probably be one of the first pieces to go. Collins says another report that both Greer and McDaniel could be fired by week 6 or 7, depending on the team's success. Well, that sounds like wishful thinking on the part of someone who wishes for Greer and McDaniel to be fired. So yeah, last night the Minnesota Vikings and Chicago played on Thursday night, and I feel like I should talk about this matchup because the Chicago Bears had been in control for almost the entirety of the game. They had a 17-6 lead headed into the quarter, and then they surrendered 3 straight touchdown drives to the Vikings. It started early in the fourth quarter with a 13-yard touchdown pass from J.J. McCarthy to Justin Jefferson, and the 2-point conversion had failed on that touchdown. And then it was Aaron Jones catching a 27-yard touchdown pass from J.J. McCarthy. And then J.J. McCarthy ran in for a third touchdown. So yeah, the Bears had a win in their grasp and they let it slip away. It wasn't nearly as much of a collapse as the Ravens had against the Bills. The Bears had a 94.2% chance to win the game at the minute and a half mark in the third quarter when Chicago had first and 5 on the Minnesota 29 with a chance to potentially make it a 24-6 game, or at least a 20-6 game. JJ McCarthy threw for, a second. Let me go to the box score. JJ McCarthy completed 13 of 20 passes for 143 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 interception, and the rushing touchdown. He ended up with a 52.6 quarterback rating. Caleb Williams had 210 passing yards on 21 out of 35 completions, a touchdown, and no interceptions. So, yeah, the Bears blew it. They had a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter. So, the Chicago defense had been stellar all game, but the Bears, after the opening drive touchdown they scored, the Bears offense only had 3 points for the rest of the game up until the 2-minute warning. That is a concerning. It implies that Chicago, yet again, is getting carried through most of the games by their solid defense. And that defense suffered a huge collapse in the fourth quarter, surrendering 3 unanswered touchdowns. So, yeah, the Chicago hype may have died just as quickly as it rose. Yeah, Bears going to bear. Colin says, I wish I didn't buy into the preseason hype for the Bears. Goatslayer says, hey, Kyle, hope you're having a good day. I'm doing okay. It's going to be a busy day for me today. So, so yeah, imagine a game where JJ McCarthy was struggling for 3 quarters, including throwing a 74-yard pick six. So yeah, it is rather concerning if you're the Bears fans. You had a 10-plus points lead in the fourth quarter at home. The defense had stymied J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings all evening long, and then you surrender 3 unanswered touchdowns in the fourth quarter and lose the game. So, for those of you in the fantasy league, the Flying Fluffy Fantasy League, Jaws will be doing a fantasy recap for week 1 where he will take a look at the results and just give an update on how everybody's doing. Oh yeah, the Steelers signed Jabril in the wake of the Deshaun Elliott injury. Deshaun Elliott will be out for the week 2 home opener for the Steelers against the Seahawks. So yeah, they added Jabril Peppers. The 49ers the 49ers put George Kittle on IR and waived Jake Moody. Congratulations, 49ers fans. You're free from Jake Moody. So George Kittle will miss games at New Orleans, home against Arizona and Jacksonville, and at the LA Rams. So yeah, George Kittle. Mr. Krabs says, I just hope the Dolphins made adjustments. Yeah. Yeah, Tank Bigsby got traded to the Eagles. The Eagles see basically a return man potential in him. Dolphins fan says John Gruden or Rex Ryan time. I can't say either of those options sound appealing to me. Chi Ali says we're doomed again. McDaniel has to go. What I will be interested to see is if the Dolphins look that bad again against the Patriots, because if we do, yeah, I'll gladly join on the fire Greer and McDaniel train. Like the Dolphins have historically done well. The Dolphins have historically done well against the Patriots in the past few seasons, and if we can't even beat Drake May and Mike Vrabel, we are going to be screwed against Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels. Mm-hmm. 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 So ESPN put up their NFL Week 2 power rankings. And they are at number 26. And they said the best newcomer performance, Rasul Douglas. There were things that went right Sunday, but Douglas entering the game after an injury to Storm Duck was one of them. Douglas made the most of his abrupt playing time, breaking up a pass in the first half and allowing just 2 catches on 4 targets. He has been in the system for only 2 weeks, but the Dolphins will need him moving forward. Duck is expected to miss multiple games with his injury. So the only teams ranked lower than the Dolphins on this list are the Patriots, the Titans, the Browns, the Panthers, the Giants, and the Saints. That sounds about right. So, ESPN also put out an article about the Miami Dolphins' thin secondary being exposed in the loss to the Colts. On the final play of the first quarter during Sunday's game between the Dolphins and Colts, Jalen Phillips sprinted past Colts right tackle Braden Smith and forced Daniel Jones to shuffle around him and right into the path of Bradley Chubb. Chubb brought Jones down for Miami's first sack of the season, breathing life into a Dolphins defense that was hemorrhaging yards to that point. On the next play, Phillips was just 1.6 yards from Jones when he released a pass, according to NFL Next Gen stats. It didn't stop Jones from hitting a wide open Michael Pittman Jr. in stride for a 27-yard touchdown. The two-play stretch was a microcosm of one of the most glaring concerns about the Dolphins' defense in 2025. How will their completely rebuilt secondary hold up if their pass rush doesn't get home? Early returns from week one weren't good. Colts beat the Dolphins 33-8 with Jones passing for 272 yards and the one touchdown. McDaniel was quoted as saying, "I think there was a lot of preparation for week one, and I don't think it looked like it." What does that mean? That means that guys let week one and the bells and whistles of the season starting get the best of them. My job is to prevent that. I did my best. Not good enough. The Dolphins pressured Jones on 8 of his 33 dropbacks, but failed to disrupt the quarterback beyond Chubb's sack. Jones completed 5 of 6 passes when pressured for 72 yards and a touchdown. According to NFL Next Gen stats, he finished with a completion percentage over expectation of plus 16%. He was also surgical when Miami failed to pressure him, completing 17 of 23 passes for 198 yards. Overall, Jones finished 22 of 29 and had a quarterback rating of 87.6. Chubb said the Colts didn't necessarily take them by surprise, even in Jones's team debut, but attributed Miami's loss to its defense not playing as a cohesive unit. They did a lot of the same things we thought was going to happen, Chubb said. Us making up our own stuff, not communicating as we could have, as well as we could have, is why we lost. So at the end of the day, it's just about learning from it and build up from it and on to next week. The Dolphins' cornerbacks room sustained myriad injuries this summer and entered the season thin after Ethan Bonner suffered a hamstring injury late in the preseason. They signed Rasul Douglas on August, but Bonner and fellow former UDFA Storm Duck are the only active returning cornerbacks from a season ago. Cap for life. Kyle, let's do business. Xavier Worthy screwed you last week. Oh man, that sucks. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of fantasy owners are going to scramble to find a replacement for him. Hello, David. I did hear about Tyreek Hill being accused of domestic violence, but there are no reports of him being arrested that I can see here. And according to Dolphins Wire, the Dolphins are, at least for now, not interested in trading Tyreek Hill. According to Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, there are two teams that stand out as clear favorites to make a deal for Hill: the Kansas City Chiefs and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, Duck had a strong training camp and earns the start Sunday, but allowed 3 catches for 51 yards and a touchdown on 4 targets. Good for a perfect 156.2 passer rating. He injured his ankle in the third quarter and didn't return, forcing Douglas into action. Cornerback Jack Jones, who signed with the team in early August, started opposite Duck and allowed 3 receptions for 48 yards on 5 targets. He said games like Sunday's loss happened and wasn't concerned about Miami's ability to bounce back as its secondary continues to gel. We've got the players and we've got the mindsets, Jones said. We've been doing this all training camp, so I mean, it ain't nothing new. It's part of the game, you know what I'm saying? We're going against good teams every week, so we've got to learn how to watch the film, get better, move forward, and make our plays that come to us. So yeah, that was the funniest thing, was Storm Duck getting torched in week 1 after winning the starting job, and then he gets injured and Rasul Douglas is immediately and plainly better. Yeah. Cullen says Travis Etienne's stock is to the moon with the Bixby trade. Pacharo says Kyle the Dolphins. The Dolphins signed an O-line player. Yeah, they signed Cole Strange, the former Patriot. David says Xavier Howard said they knew once they took away Tua's first read, he'd panic, and he sure did. Yeah, that was disconcerting to hear that the Tua's former teammate knew exactly how to make Tua panic and throw the bad passes. So what will it take for Tua to not panic if his first read isn't immediately there? David says it's a bad look for X to say it, but it's true. I mean, Xavier's just telling the truth, isn't he? Like, it's just like the Packers last year after they dominated us in that Thanksgiving game. Was that the game I'm thinking of? Yeah, it was very cold in Green Bay, and the Dolphins, of course, lost. And the Packers players said, "Them boys looked cold out there," referring to the Dolphins. Was that last season or this? I think it might have been the season before. David says turning on an ex-teammate shows a lack of character, even if true. Mm-hmm. Mhm. So yeah, the standings. Bills. Bills leads. Bills lead the AFC East. The Bengals the AFC North since they won the divisional game against the Browns. The Chargers are winning the AFC West thanks to beating the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Colts are at the top of the AFC South thanks to their beats down against the beating down the Dolphins. Eagles leading the NFC East. The Packers are actually the Packers are winning the NFC North because they had a greater strength of victory against the Lions. They had a bigger lead against the Lions than the Vikings did against the Bears. Buccaneers were the only NFC South team to win this week. And the 49ers are leading the NFC West thanks to beating the Seahawks. Predictions for week 2. Hey, that's actually a good idea. All right, so the Thursday night's game is the Commanders at the Packers. And right now, Green Bay is favored by 3.5, and I would have to agree. I think Green Bay beats the Commanders in large part thanks to the solid Green Bay defense, including Micah Parsons. The only true threats that the Packers will have to contend with is Deebo Samuel, who has beaten Green Bay before multiple times. Then you have Jacksonville. On Sunday, you have Jacksonville at Cincinnati. Cincinnati should easily win that. Easy Bengals win. Cowboys playing at home against the Giants. Again, the Cowboys still have enough talent where they should easily handle the Giants. And then you have the Lions and Bears. The Lions did not look so good against the Packers. Chicago just showed how easily they could surrender leads. I'm going to say that this Lions-Bears game will probably play out very similar to how that Thanksgiving game did, where one team is going to look like it's completely dominating, and then the other will come back. So the Lions, who scored an NFL high 32 points per game last season, didn't reach the end zone until the final minute against the Green Bay defense featuring Parsons. I'm not going to bet against Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell will be going up against his former offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson, and I do not think I would bet against Dan Campbell in that situation at home. So I say Detroit escapes with a win there. David says, I'll say Patriots 10, Dolphins 6. I will scream if that happens. Washington has a good young quarterback. Yeah. Well, I think Jaden Daniels probably will give the Packers fits, but, Micah Parsons might be the difference there. Bengals struggled week 1 to score. Jaguars didn't, just saying. Well, I think the Bengals will probably get it together. I mean, there's too much talent for Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins to not be able to overcome Jaguars defense. You have the Rams at Tennessee. That should be an easy Rams victory. And then you have New England at Miami. And if you can believe it, Miami is actually favored by 1.5 by ESPN bets. It's really impossible to make a prediction there because there is no way to tell yet if the Dolphins we saw in week 1 were a nightmare fluke or a nightmare that's just beginning. The Patriots have historically been dominated by the Dolphins, especially when the Dolphins are playing at home through these past few years with Tua and McDaniel. So in any other year, this game is a gimme for the Dolphins. Hell, I think we beat them last year when we did not even have Tua. So, of course, now the Patriots head coach is not Gerard Mayo, it's Mike Vrabel. And Vrabel has been a thorn in the Dolphins' side the past few years. So I don't care. I don't care what it takes, Dolphins. Just gets the win and then worry about how badly Josh Allen will steamroll you on Thursday, the following Thursday. Then you have the 49ers and Saints. 49ers probably get that win even without George Kittle. Now, it'll be interesting to find out if Brock Purdy is also out for that game. I think the 49ers will have to start Mac Jones. If Purdy is out, the Saints suddenly do have a chance to win that game against an injured 49ers team. Then you have Buffalo at the Jets. Bills definitely are going to win that one. The Seahawks playing at the Steelers. The 49ers tried to hand victory on a silver platter to the Seahawks in week 1, and the Seahawks refused. I'm pretty sure the Steelers will win that game. It's going to be fun. It's the DK Metcalf game. Then Browns and Ravens. The Ravens are favored by 10.5 by ESPN bets, but I can no longer trust the Ravens to win games they should easily win. I think they lost to the Browns just last year in a game that they should have won. So yeah, on paper, Baltimore should crush Cleveland, but you can't rely on that because Baltimore is a team of massive freaking chokers. Steven thinks the nightmare is just beginning. Tua playing that bad while only being pressured 22%. Steven says if the Patriots win, Dolphins are on 0-17 watch. Well, Xavier Howard already spelled it out, saying that all you have to do is take away Tua's first read and watch him panic. So if McDaniel has any ability to coach, and if Tua has any ability to improve as a quarterback, they're going to have to spend all of this week forcing Tua to go to his second and third reads without going into panic mode. Mr. Krabs says teams has figured us out. McDaniel has changed nothing. David says, so if teams are keen on the pass, we need to run it. Why is that so hard? Yeah, like Achan was one of the lone bright spots on Sunday. He had a decent day, including the garbage time touchdown catch. And that's good because I have Achan as my running back one in fantasy football. Steven says, just glad my Colts broke the damn curse. Hope it's a sign that something is changing for us. So the other games on Sunday next week, you have Denver at Indianapolis, and that game just became a lot more interesting because it's either the Colts offense is that good or the Dolphins defense is that bad, or both. Bo Nix struggled mightily in that game against the Titans, who aren't exactly the strongest defense in the world. The Denver defense still remains one of the better defenses in the league. So it's tempting to pick this week 2 matchup as the game where all the Indianapolis fans' hopium comes crashing back down after a thrashing by Denver, but Bo Nix needs to not imitate Tua out on the field, the Tua from this week 1. Like, I would say Denver might escape with the narrow victory as the odds favor them to do. I think it might be another ugly win for Denver. Then you have the Carolina Panthers at the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals take that one. The Panthers don't look good at all. And you have the Eagles at Kansas City. Oh boy. Kansas City looks mortal now, but this is a home game for Kansas City, but they're also without Xavier Worthy now. I'd say the Eagles win this one. The Eagles win this one. They take advantage of Kansas City's rather mediocre defense. And I'd say the Eagles get that win. Then you have The Falcons at the Vikings. And based on the showing from last night and Atlanta being betrayed by Yunwei Koo once again, I would say the Vikings win that game, the Sunday night game. And then Monday the 15th is actually a double header where the Buccaneers play at the Texans. And the Texans if the Texans couldn't beat the Rams, I don't know if they're really going to be able to beat the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield and Bucky Irving are really good. I think Tampa Bay wins that. And then you have the Chargers at the Raiders. And yeah, I think the Chargers, the Chargers offense should do plenty enough to outduel Geno Smith and Ashton Denty. So those are my predictions. Pacharo says Kyle Vera's a GoFundMe tweets to fire Chris Greer. Steven says Colts are going to win that game, in my opinion. The Broncos barely won against the Titans while trying to give the Titans the win. The Colts will win week 2 and crash and burn week 3 against the Titans because that would be a Colts thing to do. David thinks Colts going to crash like an opioid addict on a motorcycle too soon. It might be too soon. Ask Steven if that's too soon. David says we just did not look motivated. If we don't come out angry and desperate, coach can't coach. Well, the Dolphins players are going to be stewing for this entire week, knowing that they surrendered 33 points to Daniel Jones and the Colts offense and couldn't do anything on the offensive side of the ball themselves. So if that humiliation in week 1 can't spur the Dolphins to do better, nothing will in this era. But Teleron says, fire them all, Kyle. Tear it all down. Buy everyone out and start from scratch. Colin thinks the Texans will bounce back. They just need to figure it out on offense. Oh yeah, here's a fun article from ESPN. Ravens' historic meltdown goes beyond past fourth quarter struggles. Just as the Buffalo Bills were lining up for the winning 32-yard field goal, Baltimore Ravens safety Kyle Hamilton looked up at the scoreboard, which showed they had given up 394 yards passing to Josh Allen. I'm about to throw up on the field, Hamilton said. This sickening feeling came at the end of Sunday night's 41-40 season opening loss, which shouldn't be lumped together with past late game collapses for Baltimore. This was a historic meltdown that led to the Ravens giving up 16 unanswered points because of struggles on pass defense, a debatable coaching decision, and a turnover by one of the game's best running backs of all time. To put Baltimore's disastrous fourth quarter in perspective, entering Sunday night, teams had a record of 2,312 to 3, a 998 win percentage, when holding a lead of 15 or more points in the final 4 minutes of a game since 2000. When the Ravens were up 40 to 25 with 4:48 remaining, their chances of winning were at 99.1%. The Ravens entered the regular season as the betting favorite to win the Super Bowl and started with one of the most mind-blowing defeats in franchise history. David says, okay, gotta pretend to work. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for joining us, David. Steven says, Titans and Jaguars get one good year every 10 years. Texans are always inconsistent, and the Colts used to be the only good team in the AFC South, but are in a drought. Yeah. That Sunday night loss marked the Ravens' fifth loss after leading by 10 or more points in the fourth quarter over the past 7 seasons. That's tied with the Bears for the most double-digit fourth quarter collapses in the NFL over that time. The Ravens defense allowed 264 yards in the fourth quarter. It's the most yards given up in the fourth quarter by a team over the past 5 seasons. Let's see. Josh Allen became the first player with at least 250 passing yards and 3 total touchdowns in the fourth quarter since Ben Roethlisberger in 2010. Ravens coach John Harbaugh believes the biggest problem was their failure to contain Allen. Quote, we had a plan and we just didn't get it done. We weren't able to execute. That was a big part of the plan would be to keep him in the pocket. We weren't able to do that. That's probably the number one disappointment for me. Steven says Ravens are a team that never play out how they should. I don't know how they were Super Bowl favorites. They're absolutely dreadful against playoff caliber teams once the playoffs hit. Steven says, I think they even gave the Chargers a playoff win recently. Cap for Life asks, the Raiders play the 49ers? No, the 49ers play the Saints and the Raiders play the Chargers in week 2. One of the most debated decisions of the game came with 1:33 left in the fourth quarter when the Ravens faced a 4th and 3 at their own 38-yard line while holding a 40-38 lead. According to ESPN Analytics, Baltimore's win probability was 81.4% if the Ravens went for it on that play. Instead, the Ravens punted, which drops their win probability to 73.2%. The Bills drove 66 yards on 9 plays to set up the winning kick as time expired. But apparently, Lamar Jackson was cramping while jogging off the field, which influenced John Harbaugh's decision to punt. At that point in the game, the Ravens had given up touchdowns on 4 of their last 6 drives, including the last 2. But Harbaugh said he chose the punt because of his belief that his defense could stop Buffalo. I'm not shying away from putting our defense out there, Harbaugh said. I trust our defense, and I'm going to trust our defense this year in a lot of big situations. Our defense is going to be really, really good. And I know there's doubt about that right now, probably, but I guarantee you our defense is going to play really good football this year. So yeah, those are the biggest storylines. Let's talk a little bit about the biggest storylines from this week 1. You have the Eagles winning the season against the Cowboys, thanks to CeeDee Lamb not being able to catch anything. You have the Chargers beating the Chiefs and making Kansas City look very mortal in the process. You have the Colts humiliating the Dolphins, and now Indiana Jones might become an unironic nickname for Danny if he continues to perform anywhere close to that level. Then you have the crazy game you have the fun game between the Steelers and Jets where Aaron Rodgers threw for almost 250 yards and 4 touchdowns to beat his former team in the Jets. You have, what else do you have here? Green dominance against the Lions. Atlanta suffering routine heartbreak again. But I guess the thing everybody's going to be talking about from this week is going to be Buffalo coming back and winning that game against the Ravens. How was fantasy for the other teams for week 1? Okay, I'll answer. Let's see, well, give me a second. Give me a second. So, my dad, Jaws, he won his fantasy game. He had 5 different players put up less than 10 points, but he still won his fantasy game because Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry both got him over 29 points each. And I lost my game. I was punished because I chose to start Amon-Ra St. Brown, Terry McLaurin, and Devonta Smith over guys like Cedric Tillman, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze. And of course, Zach Ertz also did better than Devonta Smith, or should I say Colston Loveland. My dad will be putting out a video that basically recaps week 1 for the fantasy. So yeah, it could be a long season ahead. It could be a very, very long season ahead for the Dolphins. But in the meantime, all that we can do is wait and find out in what states do the Dolphins come out on the field at Hard Rock Stadium on Sunday against Mike Vrabel, Drake May, and the New England Patriots. So yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' predictions. I'd love to hear your predictions for this upcoming week. So the NFL has fined Jalen Carter $57,000 for spitting on deck. That spit had better been worth it, Jalen. That's the most expensive spit I can think of. So, in the last 5 seasons, the Ravens have lost 8 games in which they had a win probability above 90%. The next closest team has 5. The games are as follows. 2021 Week 1 at Raiders. Baltimore hit a go-ahead field goal with 42 seconds left while the Raiders had no timeouts. Ultimately, they lost in overtime. 2022 Week 2 versus Dolphins. Baltimore gave up 28 fourth quarter points, with 21 of those being unanswered, might I add. 2022 Week 4 versus the Bills. Baltimore led 20-3 at the 2-minute warning of the first half. They still lost 23-20. 2022 Week 12 at Jaguars. Baltimore was up 19-10 and had the Jaguars facing a 4th and 8 with less than 9 minutes left and lost. This game also included a fourth quarter fumble, this time by Gus Edwards. 2023 Week 3 versus Colts. Baltimore sacked Gardner Minshew for a safety to go up 19-16 just before the 2-minute warning, but it then had to punt the ball away and ended up losing in overtime. 2023 Week 10 versus the Browns. Baltimore led 31-17 with 11 minutes left. Lamar Jackson threw a fourth quarter pick six in this one, though it was batted at the line. 2024 Week 12 versus Week 2 versus the Raiders. Baltimore led 23-13 with 12 minutes left. They managed to lose in regulation. 2025 Week 1 at Bills. Baltimore encountered Josh Allen. Dolphin thinks it's going to be a long season. Well, to quote Rod Serling, in regards to we just have to pray that we don't hear Rod Serling say about Week 1 for the Dolphins, what you have just witnessed could be the end of a particularly terrifying nightmare. It isn't. It's the beginning. Luke the Drifter says, why would Ross try and get Watson but not Shador? Who is saying that Ross was trying to get Deshaun Watson? I mean, I think the Dolphins had been one of the teams potentially interested in Deshaun, but that was, back when he was still on the Texans and was being considered traded away. And I think Stephen Ross, as far as Shador goes, Stephen Ross correctly knew that drafting Shador Sanders would come with a whole ton of media circus above and beyond what the Dolphins are already used to. Shador comes in with all the crazy fans of his who see his poor performance in a preseason game and say that the Browns are conspiring to make him look bad. So that's my assessment, anyways, is the only team that was willing to deal with Shador Sanders and all the baggage that comes with him was apparently Cleveland. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Colin says, I mean, Sanders will eventually, just not right now. Luke the Drifter says, it was reported Ross was close to getting Watson, but two victims refused to sign a confidentiality agreement. Well, that's the first I've heard of any such thing, and as such, I will take it as essentially speculation. You know, I can't exactly say it would surprise me, considering that this is Stephen Ross we're talking about, the same guy who was caught tampering for both Tom Brady and Sean Payton, and was also accused by Flores of telling Flores to tank games in 2019. They never did prove those tanking allegations, by the way. And I'm sure there would be a whole ton of Dolphins fans who would reach their limit if this season ends up starting off the same way 2019 did. Goat Slayer says, really like that Thomas jersey. Never got my hands on the blue one, but I have an orange Culpepper one. It was free. Goat Slayer says, Stephen Ross needs to sell the team. He only cares about making money from the Dolphins organization. Tua making $53 million a year is also a huge problem, like McDavid in Edmonton. Yeah. You know, only so much of that Tua contract I can truly blame on Ross. That contract we handed out to Tua is essentially it is a consequence of just how high player contracts in general have become, especially quarterback and defensive players. Those contracts have soared through the roof as teams have essentially been outbidding each other for guys or trying to pay their stars to keep them around. You just have to look at Dak Prescott, who is making $60 million a year. What do I think of Rex Ryan or Spagnuolo as head coach? Well, I would prefer to refrain from talking about potential new coaches until the Dolphins did make the decision to fire McDaniel and Greer. Ghost Slayer says, I would rather we pay that same salary to Stafford to finish his career here and still make us a playoff contender. Yeah, there's no way the Rams are giving up Stafford unless his body gives out on him. And then he wouldn't be worth that contract if he can't stay healthy. As it is, from what I understand, Stafford was looking just fine against the Texans. He became the 10th player in NFL history to reach 60,000 passing yards. Luke says, I don't understand why Tua's contract is a problem when Denver got rid of Russ, and most likely Cleveland will get rid of Watson. I think it's about Tua has one more year, I think, left on his current contract, and that's a lot of dead money if the Dolphins cut Tua at any point between now and the end of next season. So and the end of ESPN put out a article talking about all the play callers for every NFL team. And of course, Mike McDaniel is the play caller in Miami. He has called offensive plays in each of his 3 previous seasons in Miami and continues in the role in 2025. He called plays sparingly during his time as the 49ers offensive coordinator prior to his tenure in Miami. He was mainly involved in play design and run game coordination. The Dolphins finished 6th in total offense in 2022 and led the league in 2023, but they dropped to 18th last season amid instability at the quarterback position. With game-breaking speed at wide receiver and running back, Miami could return to the top 10 in 25. Or they could end up in bottom 10 if the results from Sunday are anything to go by. The Dolphins utilized motion on 81% of their offensive plays last season, the highest rate in the league. Tua signed a 4-year extension in 2024. He has until 2028. Yeah. So we're stuck with him for a while. I mean, when things are just right, Tua is one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL in scenarios where everything goes perfectly to plan. His completion percentage is usually the highest in the league. But like Xavier Howard so generously pointed out, all you have to do is take away Tua's first read and watch him panic. And the fact that in year 6, Tua would end a game with a worse quarterback rating than a rookie quarterback going up against one of the best defenses in the league in Cam Ward is highly disturbing. Mr. Krabs says we can't just get rid of Tua after the season. Look at all that money we have on him. Mythical Riz says this might sound a little ridiculous, but can AI take over the job of play calling to some degree? Well, there are probably NFL teams right now that are utilizing AI to analyze plays. Isn't that what the Watson, IBM, and Next Gen Stats are about? I don't think it's generative AI though. But the NFL actually uses the AI that actually is practical in essentially analyzing and collecting data. Mr. Crab, Luke the Drifter says, "Does McDaniel understand other coaches study films from Miami's games?" Yeah. He better understand. The issue seems to be that McDaniel still struggles with getting his players ready for a game like the one against the Colts on Sunday. And he still can't get a wrangle on having Tua perform better. Goat Slayer says, I also don't like Stephen Ross because he backed out on Brady and Manning and then cut Okocinco. Who is Okocinco? Colin says, just need a better offensive system. Find it hard to believe that the system is that hard to learn. It's crazy how many timeouts they burn just because they can't get the playoff. Luke says, draft the quarterback next year, preferably Mateer, and make two of the backup like the Falcons did the Cousins. Well, right now, the strongest buzz is the Dolphins potentially trading Tyreek Hill, which would save us about $14 million in cap space this year, but also give us a $15 million dead cap hit next year. Okocinco is Chad Johnson from the Bengals. He does podcasts with Shannon Sharp. He wanted to play for the Dolphins, and that's a shame. Colin says they don't need a quarterback. They need to build up the offensive line first. It almost sounds like the Dolphins consistently struggle with good offensive lines. I wonder whose job it is to make sure that doesn't happen. Chris? Ocho, yeah. Ocho. Who thinks Tua won't make it 16 games? Well, if he gets injured again, that's not hard to predict. Some coaches can't adapt that well or implement different ways of doing things. That's what makes Tomlin, Belichick, Andy Reid great. They can adapt with what they have. Well, Tomlin clearly employs voodoo magic to have his teams consistently go over 500 for the glorious reward of getting crushed in the wild card. Like literally, how else explain that insane catch that what's his name? Was it Pickens? No, excuse me. Who caught that insane? Who made that insane catch in the Steelers? DK Metcalf. It was DK Metcalf had a ball go off his hands, tipped by Gardner Cisco, and then Jonnu Smith before ricocheting back into Metcalf's hands. Luke the Drifter says, Riz. True says, Kyle, you're doing great. Now you can have a channel and make that money. Well, we're just taking it 1 week at a time. Cliff says, Dolphins, worst team in football. Certainly looking like after week 1, the Dolphins easily are in the same sort of misery as teams like the Giants and Panthers. ESPN put out the power rankings. ESPN put the power rankings out. Give me a second, or let me find it. ESPN put the power rankings out and put the Dolphins at 26, and the only teams worse from 27 to 32 in order: the Patriots, the Titans, the Browns, the Panthers, Giants, and the Saints. So yeah, the Dolphins are definitely belong in that lowest tier of the league. You just have to now wait and see if the Dolphins can turn this around. Mythical Riz says, all right, we aren't last. Take that, Saints. I mean, I would expect teams like the Saints, Browns, Panthers, Giants, maybe even Titans again. They should all be competing for that illustrious tank bowl. And you might even have to throw the Patriots in there. Headed into this season, I thought that this season more than any other was a crossroads for the Dolphins, and that it would go one of two ways. It would either be a complete disaster, or it would be the best season we've had in a long time if everything went right. So far, it's looking like the former. So far, it's looking not just a disaster, but a disaster even worse than we could have imagined. But all the Dolphins have to do is get a convincing win against the Patriots, and you can at least head into the beatdown against the Bills in week 3, knowing we have one W under the belt. Like, I am not going to kid myself and imagine the Dolphins have any chance of beating the Bills right this moment. But the Dolphins could, I repeat, could beat the Patriots. Like, I think the Dolphins week 2 matchup is the result of that is going to be the difference between the Dolphins having still some optimism and hope for the rest of the season, or it becoming a catastrophic meltdown in South Florida. Luke says Cole Strange will save our season. He probably just picked him up because Austin Jackson is injured again. The NFL said that the Jalen Carter ejection served as the suspension for spitting. So Jalen Carter will not miss any future games. Since he was ejected from last week's without participating in a single play, the league will consider the second-year defensive tackle to have already served a one-game suspension. Carter will forfeit his week one game check worth $57,222, but he will be available to play in the Eagles' week two Super Bowl rematch against the Chiefs. The NFLPA also notified the league that Carter has waived his rights to appeal the punishment. Mm-hmm. Mythical Riz says, do we wait until a big name head coach shows up or just fire McDaniel early? I feel the organization needs a complete cleanup. Well, I would say it all comes down to how the Dolphins do in the next couple of weeks. We've got the matchup against the Patriots, which in any other season would be a W for the Dolphins. And then we have to go to Buffalo on Thursday night. My expectations for that Thursday night football game have got to be in the negative right now. Luke says the Finns will have Sealer, Shank, Allen, and Trubisky will be the quarterback. If only the defensive line could actually generate the pressure and sacks they were supposed to. He only sacked Danny Derps one time and then surrendered a 27-yard touchdown pass to him on the next play. Let's not forget how easily Jack Jones and Storm Duck won starting corner positions and both got cooked in the game. Rasul Douglas came off the bench after Storm Duck's injury and was immediately the best secondary player we had in the game. That is sad. It also makes me glad that Rasul Douglas will be staying out there on the field against the Patriots. We need something resembling competent play from the corners. Okay. All right. I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. Thank you for joining me today. I will have to talk to Jaws. I am not sure if there will be any other NFL streams until Sunday. My dad and I are planning to have a yard sale on Friday, and it's going to be a busy couple of days because we have to clear our shed, clear our garage. We've got some work to do, and I'll leave it up to him, but I may not be able to make it. I'm pretty sure my dad will be doing the hockey streams on Flying Fluffy Hockey, but I will have to consult with him about the football streams, since I'm doing a lot of the heavy lifting and work for the next couple of days. Or I might show up. I might show up on Thursday, either Wednesday or Thursday. So just my dad will keep you all posted on how that works out. So thank you for joining me, and yeah. Yeah. Dolphins need to get it together quickly, or else the season is going to be an eternity. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day.